In the spring of 1944, the 2nd Panzer Division Das Reich was transferred from the Russian front to southern France. Das Reich consisted of soldiers and officers who were hardened by the long struggle in the Eastern Front. On 6th of June, the German High Command ordered General Heinz Lammerding's division to move to the Normandy beachhead. Normally, such a trip of around 750 kilometers with about 10,000 soldiers and 200 tanks would only have to take a few days. But this was not a normal trip. There was an Allied plan for the French resistance forces with support from the British Special Operations Executive and US Office of Strategic Services to hinder the road movement of German reinforcements to Normandy right after the launch of Overlord. The undertaking was to combine the various resistance forces within occupied France to slow, if not actually to deny the Germans the ability to deliver men and panzers in the Normandy area from the rest of occupied France. The routes shown here were those taken between 8th and 12th of June when the division reached Limoges. After the 12th, the division carried on up the N147 towards Normandy. The main locations of the clashes between Das Reich and the resistance were on D704 towards Sarlat. With every tank transport in the region out of action, Das Reich would have to head for the fighting by road. Not only would this delay their arrival, but it would inflict damage on both roads and vehicles. As the division drove north, resistance fighters and Allied special forces assembled to stop them. Probably the most famous attack against the division was led by Tommy Macpherson. He became infamous among Axis forces as the Kilted Killer. He caused so much damage to German military infrastructure that a bounty of 300,000 francs was placed upon his head. On 9th of June, Macpherson decided on immediate action. During the night, the group mined the road and the surrounding trees. At first ambush, they blew the tracks of the leading armored vehicle, thus blocking the road. Then, as the Germans began to work through the trees to outflank them, the resistance fighters brought down the trees and withdrew. A few days later, Das Reich passed beyond the territory covered by Tommy Macpherson's team, but that didn't mean that they were in the clear. Macpherson's work passed on to the next group of saboteurs who kept up the work of obstructing Das Reich's progress. This group managed an even greater coup than Macpherson had. They kidnapped Major Helmut Kempfe, one of the division's senior officers. Helmut Kempfe was a highly decorated veteran who was executed by the French resistance, who burned him alive along with other German soldiers in front of a cheering crowd of French villagers. In retribution, the Germans carried out the Horador Massacre in occupied France on the 10th of June 1944. In total, 643 men, women and children were killed in Oradour-sur-Glane by troops from Das Reich. The commander of the 4th Panzer Grenadier Regiment, Sylvester Stadler, ordered a court-martial into the massacre. Major Adolf Dickmann, the commander of the 1st Battalion, 4th Panzer Grenadier Regiment, and a personal friend of Kempfe, was charged over the killings. After seeing his friend's fate, the village was destroyed on his personal orders. Das Reich's division commander agreed that Diekmann should face a court-martial. But all charges were dropped when Diekmann was killed fighting in Normandy a few days later on the 29th of June 1944. At last, Das Reich reached the war zone. It did so not as a collected unit, but in dribs and drabs. It was too late to prevent the Allies forming a bridgehead in Normandy. The sabotage operations had kept a vital German formation out of action for 2 weeks, helping to ensure the success of D-Day.